My friend, I don't think I've ever made a list this good in the entire history of this channel. In this video, we're going to talk about some mobile action RPGs that are truly worth playing. You'll notice that there's a certain pattern in this type of mobile game, but the truth is most of the games on this list can easily keep you playing for over 100 hours. So my friend, make sure to leave a like and let's get started. If you've watched this anime, you already know that it's also an action RPG, and of course the game would be the same. Let's talk about Solo Leveling. Arise.
How dare you! I'll grind to dust!
The idea from the anime is also present here in the game. You build your team with up to 3 characters and enter dungeons to earn money. Of course, if you've watched the anime, the experience might be even better because you can choose your favorite characters and upgrade them. However, even if you've never watched it, it's still worth playing because it doesn't change much. In fact, if you haven't watched the anime, you'll probably end up watching a lot of cutscenes and following the story that's presented inside the game. And of course, I don't even need to mention that the gameplay is absolutely insane. I think there always has to be an isometric game on the list. They work really well with action RPGs. Let's talk now about UNDECEMBER. I know exactly what you're thinking. I could have put Diablo Immortal on this list, but the truth is only people who have actually played this game know that its combat is 10 times better than Diablo. Another thing the game does really well is that it doesn't use a traditional class system. Instead, you create your character and equip any gear you want, and your character basically becomes that class, and the combat is much faster and much closer to a hack and slash style, which makes the game feel much better, at least when it comes to the combat system. I honestly don't know why this game isn't more popular, but it's definitely worth giving that. Probably the newest action RPG on this list is a game you've most likely already heard of, Where Winds Meet. Breaking away from the usual formula, the game also doesn't rely on an anime style featuring much more realistic looking characters. It's also worth mentioning that the game comes from China, and honestly China really challenged the usual standards with this one. The game follows a completely different gameplay style from the usual predatory gacha systems. It focuses much more on an offline story and open world for you to explore, and it's a game you can complete without spending any money. But even so, the game doesn't leave you without online features. It also has co-op and plenty of things for you to do inside this world. Without a doubt, one of the best games on this list when it comes to combat is Wuthering Waves. Out of all the games that tried to compete with Genshin Impact, I honestly think this was the first one to truly do it. The game has incredible quality. At this point, I think almost everyone has played Genshin Impact at least once, and one of its biggest weaknesses is that the combat can feel a bit stiff and predictable. Wuthering Waves takes a completely different approach, and that's exactly why it's one of the best games on this list. You can easily spend 3 to 5 hours straight just fighting monsters because the combat is simply that good. To be honest, I don't know that much about this game. It's the one I played the least on this list. Now let's talk about Zenless Zone Zero. The story of Zenless Zone Zero takes place in a post-apocalyptic world devastated by the Hollows, spatial anomalies filled with monsters known as ethereals. Humanity has taken refuge in the metropolis of New Eridu. You take control of the siblings Wise and Bell, who work as proxies and fight these monsters. This game comes from the same company behind the famous Genshin Impact, and it's basically their take on the action RPG genre. While many of the other games on this list focus on over-the-top combat, the developers showed that they could make a great action RPG as well. And one more thing this game has plenty of is fan service. Maybe this isn't the big action RPG you're looking for, the famous hack and slash style, but it still has a lot of quality. Let's talk about Guardian Tales. This is one of the games with the most story content and cutscenes for you to go through. To give a very quick summary, you are one of the first knights, and on the day of your graduation, monsters attack. You end up with the future princess and need to protect her. After that, the game sends you to several different worlds in search of the future princess. Even though the game doesn't have that fast-paced action RPG combat style, it doesn't fall behind when it comes to battles. The combat is really fun, responsive, and at the same time fast. You could say this game has almost everything you could want except for an open world, but for example, it has PvP, co-op, tons of characters to collect, and it's simply an amazing game. METRIA is the first online RPG from the famous Asobimo, a company that usually focuses on making MMORPGs, and we're going to talk about it now. One of the most interesting characteristics of this game, and actually this company in general, is that they always make very challenging games. That this one is no different. It's like it's 10 times harder than any other game we've talked about here. The story is very similar to Genshin Impact, where you control a character who falls into a completely unknown world without knowing exactly where to go. Along the way, he makes new friends and tries to do the right thing. The open world is really cool and has plenty of things for you to explore. The character swapping is also constant and the combat is really fun, but I'm sure you'll die 10 times more than in any other game on this list. When this game was first announced, a lot of people called it a mix of Genshin Impact and Pokemon, but the truth is it's neither of those. Let's talk about Mongil Star Dive. Since we're talking about action RPGs, I can tell you that the combat is really good. It has some unique mechanics and it's a game that puts a strong focus on boss fights, so it's definitely worth checking out for the combat alone. But the truth is, a lot of people got the wrong idea. The game has nothing to do with Pokemon. You simply help a character break the curse affecting the monsters, which are actually considered good creatures in that world. Honestly, out of all the games on this list that I've played, this was the one that got me the most interested in its story. The story is really good, but at the same time, you could still say that it's a pretty generic game. The truth is, a lot of people got the wrong idea about this game because of its trailer. But now let's talk about NTE NEVERNESS to EVERNESS.
To me. No mercy. Thousand eyes, awaken!
A lot of people thought it would actually be some kind of anime-style GTA, but the truth is that it's an open-world RPG. Unlike all the other games, it takes place in a normal city instead of a medieval world. Of course, this changes a lot of things. The game gives you plenty of things to explore, but this time in a city filled with people, buildings, smartphones, and many modern elements. However, at the same time, it also features several characters with different abilities, making it a very well-made action RPG. I honestly wasn't expecting much from this game, but it has the potential to become one of the best. Without a doubt, the best game on this list. I'm genuinely a huge fan of this game. Let's talk about Punishing Grey Raven. A lot of people praise this game because of the punishing virus which destroyed the earth and its characters trying to defeat the machines. The game has an amazing story that is highly praised and it's definitely worth reading all the dialogues. But without a doubt, this is the best hack and slash game I have ever played. And I'm gonna say something crazy, but yes, I think it even surpasses older Devil May Cry games and even titles like God of War. This game is unbelievably good. After exceeding all expectations, it was also released on Steam, and for the first time a mobile game received nothing but positive reviews. One of the best games on this list when it comes to co-op and PvP is Crystal of ATLAN.
Destroy all! Yep.
You could say that Crystal of ATLAN really broke into the mainstream when it launched on Android. A lot of people played it and a lot of people followed its release. Even though the game has an open world for you to explore, it's basically a dungeon crawler since most of the gameplay takes place inside dungeons. One really cool thing is that the game moved away from the gacha system. You can unlock every character just by playing, and the game is also heavily focused on co-op. However, one thing that honestly surprised even the developers was how successful the PvP turned out to be. It's definitely one of the best parts of the game and what most players spend their time playing. It's absolutely worth checking out for that alone. I honestly feel like I'm going to get criticized in this video just for saying good things about this game, but let's talk about Devil May Cry Peak of Combat. The truth is, this game had been announced for a long time, and when it finally released, a lot of people didn't like it. The game came with terrible monetization systems and of course a lot of online story content designed to make you spend money. But the truth is, if you play it for the gameplay and don't want to spend any money inside the game, you'll find that it's actually a really good game. If you're a Devil May Cry fan, you'll also have many of the most famous characters there for you to collect and complete different missions with. And even though the game received a lot of negative feedback at the beginning, the truth is that it never died and there are always people still playing it. As time goes on, this game is gaining more and more attention. A lot of people are discovering that it is actually a really good game. And let's talk now about Duet Night Abyss. You could say that the game launched like many others, an open world, characters to collect through a gacha system and plenty of things for you to spend money on. But the game also listened a lot to its community, and nowadays it has changed completely. You can play the game from 0 to 100% completely for free, and you can even get all the characters. One thing the game introduced that was really innovative was a TPS system where your character can use firearms, and many times it's even more fun than using a sword. But of course, it still remains a great action game.
Surrender. Surrender.
I know what you're going to say, you've never watched Game of Thrones. Yeah, neither have I, but you can still enjoy this game. Let's talk about Game of Thrones KINGSROAD.
Finish this already! This takes me! Enough!
For fans of Game of Thrones, the game takes the franchise's universe and brings some well-known characters from the series into the game. But for those of us who've never watched it, you can still play it without any problem. The game has a good story where you create your own character and help some characters you meet along the way. Its open world is impressive, and unlike many of the games on this list, it doesn't have an anime art style. The combat is quite different from what you'd normally expect, and the game also features cooperative modes and even PvP, so you can play with other people. This is one of those games you can honestly consider a console quality experience on mobile. You know, I couldn't leave this one out, right? This game is simply a phenomenon even today, and of course we're going to talk about Genshin Impact.
Nice and spicy.
Locked on!
You could say that the game is an action RPG, yes, but at the same time it also focuses on other things such as exploration. The game is heavily focused on a huge open world for you to explore, and actually the combat system is one of the areas that has evolved the least in the game. The battles can feel predictable, and even the weapons are pretty standard, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. In fact, it's the best game on this list when it comes to numbers and popularity. Honestly, I think everyone in their life will get addicted to this game at some point. Do you know those games with endless grinding? Well, if you don't, you're about to, because now we're talking about ABYSIDIA. This is an action RPG in its purest form. It's the kind of game where you're in the menu, then you jump into a battle, and after that you go right back to the menu. The biggest difference between this game and others like Punishing Grey Raven, which we mentioned earlier, is that this one feels almost endless. And when I say endless, I'm talking about your character progression and how far you can keep advancing. I don't know what the maximum level is, but I'd say it's probably around 200. The combat is really fun, and of course there are plenty of monsters for you to defeat, but this is the kind of game you'll never truly finish, and of course it'll always keep asking for more. A lot of people don't know this game, and it might be the only one on this list that you play with your phone held vertically. Let's talk about ACHROMA. Unlike all the other games that have thousands of buttons, here you basically just move forward and swipe with your character, but of course that doesn't mean the game is worse. In fact, it's very intuitive and really fun. Besides its RPG system, the game also has a roguelike system where you can upgrade your character every time you clear a stage. After the first 10 stages, you face a final boss. A lot of people ignore this game simply because it's played vertically on your phone, but that's actually one of its best features. It's definitely worth giving it a try. Maybe I shouldn't have put this game on the list because, my friend, you could say it's a pretty controversial game. Let's talk now about Action TAIMANIN. Well, let's completely ignore the characters and just talk about the game itself, where you play as some characters who work for a secret organization that prevents alien invasions. So far the story is fine, and of course the combat represents a more traditional style of action as well, but now I can't ignore the characters anymore because that's exactly what makes this game stand out. You could say this is one of the games that relies the most on fan service that I've ever seen on the Play Store. However, unlike many other games, the combat here is still really good and it remains a very complete game. That's exactly why it's on this list. I've been playing Aether since its launch, and I can tell you that it's a very underrated game. Let's talk about it now.
Follow the plan.
Oh, looks like this is boring. Why don't you just come together?
Take my sword.
Unlike many other games on this list, this one focuses much more on a menu, then battles, then back to the menu again. The game doesn't have an open world for you to explore, it's all about the battles. And of course, unlike many games on this list, this one features 3 active characters during battles at all times. There's also a system where you can combine ultimate abilities, which is one of the game's strongest points. But what I like the most is that the characters are very different from each other. The game doesn't follow a standard formula, every character feels unique, and that's the best part. When this game was announced, a lot of people said it was already too late because honestly there are already many games in this style. But now let's talk about ARKNIGHTS. It might sound crazy what I'm about to say, but this game is the most well-made one on this entire list. The details aren't just in the characters, but also in the world and the story. Everything is incredibly well done in this game, and I truly think it's close to perfect. Even though the combat can feel a little stiff, the game has a story mode, some online features, and many characters for you to collect. The truth is that ARKNIGHTS managed to innovate a lot in this genre, both graphically and with its management system, where there are many things for you to do. Another game that a lot of people were really hyped about when it was released. Let's talk now about BLEACH Soul Resonance. For those who don't know, this is a famous anime from the 2000s and it has already had several other games. For example, on the PlayStore, if I'm not mistaken, there are 3 games based on it. However, the anime returned in 2026 and they released this game to help promote the continuation of the anime. Just like other anime-based games on this list, the game has really good combat because it works in a similar way. If you've already watched it or if you're a fan of the anime, it might be even more interesting for you to play. But even so, it is still a good game because of its gameplay. But there's one thing I don't know and I'll ask you to explain it in the comments. Does the game tell the story from the beginning of the anime or does it continue from where the anime is going to continue? And that's the end of our list. These were some of the best action RPGs you can play on mobile right now. Of course, there are many other amazing games out there, so if you think I missed any, leave your recommendation in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.